And etched in stone atop the crumbling remains of a building called the Tripolon is a depiction of this ancient god, seated inside a winged disc. Ahura Mazda was central to.
When we look at Zarathustra encountering Ahura Mazda, what we are confronted with here are human beings who are encountering non-human intelligences. These are indicative of physical encounters. These are encounters with something which is otherworldly, yet physical.
In 1843, a team led by the French scientist Paul-Émile Botta was excavating the area for archaeological treasures in Iraq. And in this process, they unexpectedly discovered a huge Assyrian palace full of ancient Sumerian cuneiform inscriptions. But what these inscriptions told was about to change the way we look at the history of human civilization forever. These cuneiform tablets talk about a mysterious group of powerful beings known as Anunnaki. The exact translation of the word Anunnaki is the Sky People. These beings were described as giants in terms of size, and they had ruled men for thousands of years.
Now, in the Sumerian version of these stories, it's the senior Anunnaki Enlil who actions and pushes all these negative agendas that are somewhat hostile to human beings. But there is another agenda in the Anunnaki community. There is a figure called Enki, who appears to be the leader of the Earth Project, and he is junior to Enlil. He's described as Enlil's brother. So in the Sumerian story, humanity gets caught in the crossfire of these mysterious beings in conflict. It's Enki, the one who's in charge of the Earth Project, who wants to upgrade human beings for a more enjoyable, a better, a more conscious kind of life. And there's a conflict between and Enki over whether that should happen. Enlil, the CEO, does not want that, and so Enki breaks ranks to achieve that upgrade for us.
Have you ever wondered why the Anunnaki are not mentioned in the Bible? The Anunnaki are known as ancient deities from Mesopotamian mythology, who supposedly created humans. However, there is no mention of them in the Bible. Some scholars believe that the reason the Anunnaki were not mentioned in the Bible is because the authors of the Bible were not aware of their existence. Others believe that the Anunnaki were deliberately omitted from the Bible by religious leaders.
When you hear about, modern day historians, archaeologists, you talk about Persia, dating back to like the 6th century, or else one of the oldest civilizations on earth, over in Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, and it stretches into Iran, but it's just a small little part. That's just the human side of the knowledge. That's just the part that they're allowed to speak about, or else the things that they know about through these places that are really guarded, where the archaeology takes place inside of the Middle East. It's really highly protected. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of years when we talk about Mesopotamia, and then we're talking into hundreds of thousands of years when we talk about the Anunnaki. So modern day humans, they don't really understand it, the context of the time space on Earth, on what really happened. Then you have modern day science, you have paid scientists, you have paid history. The history books are almost all a lie, So everything is actually really covered up. There's a lot of knowledge that the CIA really knows. There's a lot of knowledge that the Vatican, the intelligence from the Vatican that controls a lot of information, the Jesuits who closed up all the information that was free in the world. They started reconstructing everything in the 1600s. They started controlling schools, education systems. The scholarly part of the world systems they took a large, vast control over it everywhere. Later on, that's all going to connect over to the Rothschilds, who's going to create, this huge, vast industry that's going to mass produce all the books in the world. They're going to own everything in Europe inside the United States. They're going to buy out all the pressing machines to create books. In the late 1700s to 1800s, they're going to control the flow of information that's happening through the world. So here's the real part of hidden history of what's happening with Iran, what's happening with Iraq. It's confusing because we're going to jump around in all these different timelines. As you know, what's happening in Egypt now, what's discovered underneath Egypt that a lot of people were talking about, for decades. Now it became mainstream about 10 years ago on the internet that underneath the pyramids, there was some kind of form of electricity that was being made. And then people started coming into Tesla energy, saying that there's a way that underneath the pyramids, there's all of these systems that's creating infinite energy. And there was a global structure of how the pyramids was creating energy through different parts of Europe. And some speculate that it was also going around the world, this electrical source. A lot of that is being confirmed now, that you're actually seeing it with what's happening that was discovered over in Egypt. But before that discovery, I was telling you about a lot of these things that's connected to the Templars Knights, a long time ago, that kind of kicks off later the pilgrimage that happens when people want to go see the old Christian lands and all of these old pilgrimages that later turns into the Christian wars. So that's where you have the Templars Knights. They're going into Jerusalem over to King Solomon's temple. And deep underground King Solomon's temple, he has all advanced technology, and he has these boxes of monoatomic gold, and it's really light. And that monoatomic gold is what people, refer to inside those boxes, that people refer to as the Ark of the Covenant. So those huge boxes were taken out, and they're the same size that fit inside the Egyptian pyramids. So that gold, it was used, to create electricity, to create infinite energy, and that was being used. To this day now, we know that monoatomic gold is really important, especially inside the body, inside the heart chambers. It's connected to creating a vortex inside the heart, and it's inside the blood. So with monoatomic gold, with plasma energy together, with the water, it creates a vortex that actually pumps the heart. The heart isn't really pumping the blood. It's actually the infinite energy inside of cells with plasma energy connected over to this monoatomic gold that creates this powerful energy that's also connected to time travel, that's connected to how a baby is born, when the moment inception happens inside a woman's egg, there's a light that actually happens.
A documented moment of conception, and the sperm enters the egg, and there's this poof of light that comes off of it. Scientists are studying this, and they're looking at it, and they're like, okay, well, it looks like it's a release of zinc, a burst of zinc that comes off the egg, and it creates this appearance. But any way you slice it, they can't explain away that light happens when life happens. Is that amazing? Light happens when life happens.
So that light, it's really important. It's connected to time travel. It's connected to infinite energy. It's connected to vortexes, plasma energy. It's connected to a God source of creation, of something that's really holy. And at the same time, we talk about technology, and people like to separate it. Technology is evil. God is good. Spirit is here. This is not spirit. But I keep telling you that if you believe in God, if you believe in a powerful deity that creates all things, if everything is one and God created all things, that means God created technology. Of course, some people are abusing that. Of course, technology can be used for something really sinister and really bad. The same thing, sex can be created for something really beautiful, to create humans, to create a loving energy between man and woman, but it can be used the opposite way to create human trafficking. So anything in the world can be manipulated between good, between bad, anything. That includes politicians, that includes money, that includes using a car for something good, using it for something devious. There's a lot of things that's connected to, God creating a lot of things in the universe, and that includes technology, that includes infinite energy, that includes other civilizations across the whole cosmos, across the galaxy, different dimensions, the technology that they have there in different dimensions. It's a hard subject to talk about when we're talking about all of this stuff, because we're talking about the beginning of time. Scientists believe that the Big Bang Theory happened. There was an explosion, and as everything goes out, it's moving faster than the speed of light. At the edge of existence, it's still going on, which means God is still creating everything. It keeps on going on, infinite and infinite and infinite and infinite. But what happened before God created anything? Was God always just God? Does God know where God came from? How was God created? What does God really know? So the way I was told about this in my traditional ways is, God doesn't know who God is. God doesn't know where he came from. So God lives through the existence of all humans, of all plants, of all rocks. God lives through the existence, the consciousness of the earth, through the living air systems, through the water. God lives through knowledge of everything that exists, that he is creating. He is living within himself, and he is always creating. Now he is giving us that knowledge inside of our mind, also to create something beautiful, to live through our experiences of pain, to live through consciousness, and then also to live through our mistakes, and then to experience life, to experience death, the after, the next lifetime, the next ones, and it moves around and it fluctuates so much. But then there's also an infinite energy that moves to where there's no consciousness, where that energy is so profound. This is a huge subject because I've been there. There are people who have been into this quantum field of energy. There's no consciousness there. But eventually I'll talk about those subjects. Eventually I'll start bringing it slowly into this conversation when people want to know what Buddha knew, what Jesus knew, where God really exists is the full, complete energy of God, what people call heaven, what people call, the beauty of infinite peace of existence. So we're getting off subject right now, but we're going to come back to this monoatomic gold that was on Earth. There was a lot of gold one time on Earth. Now that gold, from different civilizations, they came here to get that gold. They used it for many things inside of their civilizations, for technologies. They used it to create a whole system, different worlds made out of gold for different reasons. But also, when I say that like a system, I'm talking about like an environment that can create oxygen, an environment where they use technology to move around. They have an environment to where that gold, where they infuse it into their body, into their mind, and their mind is running almost at 100% capacity. Because as humans, we use only like 4 to 7% of our mind. While Jesus, Buddha, real masters you don't know, real masters you have never heard about, they're using their mind that's at 100%. Now, when you do that, the plasma energy inside of your body, the infinite energy that moves through your body, all of this energy with all the natural all of this natural gold that's also inside the body. It creates a vortex. It creates time travel. It's connected to sleeping, to where you can jump into different dimensions, jump into different timelines, jump into different universes. And then when you wake back up, your body comes back together really super fast, like the speed of light, and you wake back up. Your body is mimicking a lot of things that God can do in a small little way of how you can dream. And I was telling, your mind is so powerful. Your mind creates a whole dream. You can create cities with your dreams. You can have a best friend you never knew. You can have a whole construct of life in that dream where you have to go to work, you have to go to school, but something feels weird. Once in a while, you can wake up in a dream, which is really cool. That's where you actually know everything is actually a dream. And you're looking at things, you're like, oh my God, is this real? And you'll try to look at it. It's really interesting. This happened to me when I was in my younger stages, when I was around about 12 and 14. And I was using these techniques that my father was teaching me. And so I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. But the mind is so powerful. You can actually read your family when they're in danger. You can actually feel your spirit talking to you. You can actually have communications with God inside some of your hardest moments. That helps create also religion. It creates belief, and it changes the way you look at the world, that there is an outside source, or else there's an inside source that can help you in times of trouble, to help you understand the world, to learn to have faith. So this powerful different forms of energy, from faith to plasma energy to time travel, different civilizations, how God created the world, maybe what God is, and then to all of this technology that's hidden underneath Earth. And the real CIA files and different files underneath, like what Mossad has, MI6, what the Vatican really has, is they know that there's old civilizations. There's old civilizations, much older than what you read about, like the state of Iran, the state of Iraq, the state of the United States, and where everything's cut into little pieces. The Middle East is cut into all these little pieces, Saudi Arabia. It goes back to a time before there's even all this division down there, even before Mesopotamia, which is thousands of years old. We're talking about millions of years old on Earth. How civilizations were created, and then how those civilizations either collapsed or they had technology that made everything disappear, and they went to different regions, they went to different places forever, for whatever reasons they had millions of years ago. From what I see through the wires, there are 6 civilizations that have fully existed on Earth. That's before Atlantis, So Atlantis is this huge, gigantic civilization that's everywhere. It's inside of Antarctica. It's outside of Antarctica. It's inside of Europe, on the outside of Europe, inside the United States, on the outside. The reason why I say it's on the inside, on the outside, because a long time ago, when we're talking about Atlantis, we're talking about the great floods, we're talking about the huge, gigantic earthquakes, we're talking about pole shifts, we're talking about huge, gigantic, massive storms that covered the earth, whether it was through volcanic eruptions, whether it was through these huge, gigantic windstorms that lasted for thousands of years. Deep below the earth, there's ancient civilizations that is covered up. Deep below the earth, there's still old technology that exists even from thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and millions of years ago. So when we're talking about all of this now, we're talking about Iran, we're talking about the Middle East. What's really there, what's really hidden, what's really happening. What are the COMMS that we get from 17? When 17 tells you, Roswell, that's the highest classified clearance. When 17 tells you that, he's actually telling you that this is the hugest cover-up in modern history, whether it's connected to the Vatican, which is actually real intelligence, and they control a lot of old intelligence, the documents, and this stuff goes all the way back to the Council of Nicaea in the year 200 inside of Rome, when they were taking the Bible apart. They were hiding the real stuff from the Bible. They were hiding so much stuff. They were getting all the old stuff from Greece, the original papers of the Bible, and they were hiding everything from inside of it, inside the Council of Nicaea. And then they put it in a certain way that was structured to where you can control people, almost like an algorithm today. With an algorithm, you can control humans. You can control different parties of people. You can control different groups and create different groups that they abide by in structures. The information that they get is only the information that they see on the internet, these different groups. So it was almost like that. It was controlled censorship, and then it was controlled information that was put out of how the Bible was really created. So even though they're talking about all of these holy things, like the Catholic Church, I'm not against, the real Christians. I'm not against the real knowledge of Christ. I'm not against this stuff. But I'm talking about the systematic structure that was created through the Council of Nicaea. And through this systematic structure of Christianity, a lot of these popes, a lot of these people inside of these Christian systems, they're all going to kill each other. Popes are going to kill each other. They're going to order hits on each other. They're going to start moving all of this mass money through the world. They're going to create banking systems, intelligence systems, and it's going to be huge. It's going to lead all the way into pedo operations in the 11th century, the 12th century, and then they're going to all, there's all these operations to kill the Templars Knights, kill each other through different organizations. Nobody trusts each other. The Christian churches that they put up way up north inside of Europe, and then their original churches are going to end up going to war. They don't trust each other. So everything keeps on breaking apart. Then later you have their religious wars. Those are different denominations of Christianity. You have these different denominations, and they're all going to go to war. So there's a lot of dark stuff inside of that people still can't get in their mind to this day, people who go to church, that there's a really, really, really super dark side to Christianity. The control side of it, that's connected to the Vatican. And we talked about the Jesuits. We talked about the Knights of Malta. We're talking about a lot of dark stuff that creates the Vietnam War, creates, the world trade of how they're going to move drugs through the world, and how Operation Gladio is going to be created down in Italy, in the Vatican with the Operation Jesuits, and then they're going to move all of these operations through the world, creating false flag operations. They're like during the Cold War, they're going to say that, Russia's like this, Russia's creating, killing people inside of Europe. And Operation Gladio is this huge, gigantic mess, but it's created to bring in control over Europeans, to create panic, but then to create censorship, to create a lot of laws in a lot of these different countries. And then also so United States intelligence can come in and then help through Operation Gladio to say that Russia's a threat, that there's a threat coming from the Middle East, there's a threat coming from China, so we can work with your intelligence. We have to create bases here. Now we have to connect all of these operations of Europe, all these different bases. We have to create telecommunication systems behind it. And that eventually leads later on to all the wires, to all the fiber optics, to all the satellites. And then it controls the whole internet, the banking systems, a lot of stuff that was created off of these different operations. Even before Operation Gladio, there's a lot of operations like these operations we talk about, like when the Rothschilds, 200 years ago, they took over all the, the presses that create the books. They bought them all out. And they were actually the people who began to create all the pressing machines inside of Europe, inside of the UK, inside of the United States. So they gave the information, because books a long time ago, like the Arthurs, the books, these were the celebrities of the time. They were the first influencers. This is who everybody worshiped. This is who everybody followed. Mark Twain, all of these different celebrities, those were actually operations to brainwash people. So that's what people don't understand. Later on, that's going to connect over to Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Mr. Maxwell. He's going to run the publishing companies over in the UK, all the private television stations over in the UK. He's going to control UK in a large, vast majority, but he's going to be later discovered to be MI6, and is be discovered to be working for Mossad, these operations, CIA operations, controlling information through magazines, through television, and then all the networks. That means network heads, celebrities, and a lot of stuff that's huge that we're now inside of this Epstein stuff, which is still connected back to Mossad, to the Jesuits, a blackmail organization. So it's important to understand people couldn't read back in the, in the early times, the time of the Roman Empire. It's estimated that only 5 to 10% of people could read, but the estimation is really a lot lower. It's around about 2 to 3% of people could read. And also the Bible wasn't vast to where everybody had a Bible, it was just being passed around. There was only one person that could read the Bible, and that one person, it came from the highest authority inside of what the churches were creating. So it didn't really come out until later on, the mass production of the Bible doesn't even start until 1700s, until the 1800s, the mass production. So I'm telling you, things were really censored. The stuff that you see right now inside of Google or with Grok or with all of these AI telling you what's false, what's real, what's, they're controlling information because there's a lot of censorship. There's a lot of stuff about history that isn't correct. There's a lot of complete lies. When we talk about the Council of Nicene, they did control the Bible. They did kill people who were trying to expose the Bible. There's a lot of corruption behind the Council of Nicene that really happened. So even talking about all the books that were written around 1800s, even before that, the Rothschilds, they took control of all the information. The Vatican took control of all the information from the South during the Roman empires. So even the Rothschilds later on, they're going to control all the pressing machines for all the book companies, and then they're the only people that are going to be selling a lot of the pressing machine through subsidiary companies. They're going to control a large, vast of operations inside of Europe, the control of information, and then also over inside of the UK, they're going to control almost all the different information. To that day, we still have all that, the control flow of information, and you have that with AI systems telling you what's real, what's not real. And this is how scholars are controlled, because they only see data that was really widely controlled. They only see the data that comes out from universities, and they think that all that data is really real. So the real information in the world, it was actually controlled by the Roman Empire, and then also by the Catholic systems that they were creating with the Council of Nicene. And then they hid all the documents. They gathered all the different documents through all the Christian crusades, through the Christian wars that expanded all the way up into Europe. They got all the information, and they were doing this for centuries, hiding everything from different cultures, different countries, killing the people, and then hiding the real information that they had. Now, what you see through all of these different new schools, the universities, elite societies, those are just indoctrination of something that has been regurgitated, from the different centuries of a control system that's connected over to the Society of Jesuits, people who control the schools, whether it was the JEWS systems that were openly controlling a lot of universities, the funding, the money, or else it was Rothschilds, or else it was the Rockefellers, or else it was hidden operation by the Jesuits. So they hid a lot of information that was vital to Western society, and they did cover up a lot of this information that I'm telling you that is connected to operations over in Iran, where a lot of stuff has been discovered, a lot of papers have been sealed, the real story of Jerusalem, what happened there with all this monatomic gold, what happened over in Egypt, all this Tesla energy and different dimensions. All of this thing was covered up by the Catholic system because they didn't know how to control it. They didn't even really know what it was. And it was threatening a system that they were creating. So there was a lot of censorship. There was a lot of cover-up. It was a war on information because the information would have destroyed their system that they were creating, a financial system, a world control system that they were trying to create. So the Great Awakening is happening as the real truth is going to keep on leaking in different languages from different societies around the world. Military leaks. A lot of people are going to come through, scholars that know the real truth. And all of this is going to keep on combining for a huge, gigantic project that's going to end actually in 2032. So people don't really understand it, but they're part of the Great Awakening operations. Let's get back to Iran. A long time ago, underneath Iran, before modern archaeologists say, okay, this is Iraq and this is where Mesopotamia was, we're talking centuries, decades, millions of years, deep, deep underground after massive solar storms, volcanic world eruptions. And, when the world was in a different shape, as you saw, the United States, Africa, South America were once together. And as you look at all the old maps of Europe, not the old maps, when you look at the map of Europe, you can see that, Kuwait and these countries are all together. They were actually more together. But now everything is kind of separated. So we're talking a long time ago, ancient civilizations underneath Iran, underneath Iraq, underneath the Middle East in this certain region. There's an old civilization that's deep, deep underground. And the CIA know about this. But there's also a dark part of this old technology that was creating awful frequencies and was confusing people. So these dark, evil frequencies that come from the earth, it comes from certain objects, it comes from certain rocks, it comes from certain minerals, it comes from certain old technology. That energy that is emitted, it's dark. And that's how you have some of these things that is satanic, because people are listening to these vibrations. That's why you have all of these occults in the world, the Skull and Bones, the Illuminati, the top levels of the Freemasons, the Odd Fellows. We can talk at length about all of these different societies that are really dark operations, secret societies. But it's not only in the United States secret societies, it's not only in Europe, it's also in the Middle East. There are secret societies that holds Israel together, that's connected to Iraq, that's also connected over to Iran. There's secret dark societies that they're all connected to. So this vibration that comes from the earth, we've been talking about this, whether it's coming from the black rock, coming deep from underground, from blue ice, or else coming from different technologies. There's also good vibrations. That's why I was telling you that everything's one way and everything's the other way too. There's two ways. So everything can be one way, where cars are just bad for the environment, blah, blah, blah. And then it's good for you. It moves things faster. It's created to a workforce that creates the whole world. So anything can be used as good, anything can be used as bad. So this vibration that comes from the earth, it's connected to wormholes. And these wormholes in different solar systems also, they're manipulating humanity for certain things because of the energy that we put out, whether we're sad, we're crying, whether people torture animals, whether there's war, killings, there's a vibration and a frequency that comes from us. So there are spirits that use that, just like evil spirits, what people call Satan, what people call the devil. Those evil spirits, it lives on that vibration. It seeks that. So deep underneath Iran, deep under there, underneath one of the oldest civilizations, there's a huge, gigantic war that took place like millions of years ago. This is what people talk about when they talk about angels fighting the devils, the demons, the Anunnaki. When they came and there was a fight in between the Anunnaki clans over humans, over the old giants that they created, different forms of humans that existed back then. Now, underneath this old civilization, there are still relics from the evil energy. There are still old relics from the old technology that they were using to control humans. Now, those energy that come out, it creates like a psionic energy, and it's talking with the people. And this is what is underneath Iran. So for thousands of years, there's a war inside of Iran, inside of the Middle East. People are just killing and murdering each other because of those old vibrations that were coming out, because of the old technology. So what's hidden underneath Iran is this old civilization that's still emitting this energy. Now with Mossad, with MI6, with the Jesuits, they're operating over in Iran with all of the scholaries, the schools. They've corrupted their politicians. It's just a huge, gigantic mess in Iran. But they have underground bases, and underneath those underground bases, they have one of the most oldest advanced bases, but they don't really know how to operate a lot of these machines. They don't know how to operate the wormholes. They don't know how to operate the black rock. They don't know how to operate the Stargates that they have over in Iran. So these bases that's underneath Iran, old civilization, it's near a place called COMMS. It's near a place called Fordo. That's where the nuclear facility bases were at. Now, when we talk about this old ancient civilization, the reason why it's important is because you have the base over in Iraq when the United States military came in and they took control of URUK. That's where they had the Stargate that I was showing in URUK. This is where they put the military base right on top of it. They put soldiers right on top of it. There was a military base right next to it, and the whole place was closed off. And only certain United States scientists went in there and they took out stuff. This is during the Iraq War. That's why URUK was really important. So in that time, the United States took control of this base that was here. But there was an underlying system that goes just from URUK. It goes all the way up to Qom. It goes up to Fordo. Now there was a war, underground war that was happening there in the past 10 years. And this base is really strong. They have technology there. And it keeps blocking off a lot of weapons that the United States has. So they have a powerful weapon system that comes from Fordo with this advanced technology. But it doesn't spread out into the world. It's only centrified in this whole area that's in Iran all the way to the regions of Iraq. It only reaches that far because they can't fully they can't fully initiate the full power of this technology, and they've been trying to do this for a long time. That's why you have the CIA, you have the globalists inside the bases deep underground underneath Iran. So that's why the CIA controls Iran, all these generations of power. And every time these generations finally get powerful, they go against the CIA, the globalists. Then the CIA takes them out, and then another one. They install another one. They install another one. So they've been controlling Iran since the time oil was discovered, since the time they discovered that there's technology that's hidden underneath their country. So a lot of this discovery of what was discovered over in Iran, it goes really far back. And I'm jumping around because it's a huge, gigantic story. So the Templars Knights, they got information from very important Turkish people, the Templars Knight, that there's advanced technology, there's some kind of magical gold, there's magical boxes over at King Solomon's temple, which is in Jerusalem. So the Templars Knights went down there, they blocked off King Solomon's temple, they went far underneath the temple, and they got those boxes. That's the covenant of the Ark with the monoatomic gold. Now that monoatomic gold, that's going to be taken out, and then that's going to be moved over to the Vatican. It's going to be moved to different places. But that monoatomic gold was used for different civilizations for a long time, including over in URUK. It was used to generate those powers that's connected over to underground facilities, all advanced civilizations. That was also using that monoatomic gold a long time ago to create electricity, that was working with the infinite energy, that was working a long time ago with the black rock that we keep talking about. And they created that black rock into circles. So you'll see that circle a lot of places. You'll see it over in these places that's over in Iran also. You know, I'll put a picture up. But that black rock was about time travel, going through different dimensions. So Iran, the country, it goes all the way back. Iraq, the country, goes all the way back to ancient civilization. That's where we talk about the Anunnaki. That's where we're talking about other civilizations that came into this world. And they came into this world to gather all the gold for their planets. They were gathering the gold for technology, but they were gathering the gold for themselves too as a species, as they were integrating gold into their mind, so their mind could run at 100% capacity. They were drinking this gold and they were mixing it. So that's how computers work. When you have gold that run on computer, it doesn't lose the energy. It runs almost at 100% capacity. But the power of what Jesus was doing, what Buddha was doing, was they were running their mind at 100% capacity, because they were learning to use the whole spiritual plasma body of energy to move infinite energy inside of their mind, to where energy wasn't being lost. It was just actually recreating energy within itself. So as we talk about all of this stuff, technology, infinite energy, we're talking about Iran, one of the most oldest civilizations on earth. What's underneath there, the evil energy that was coming out from all of those old systems that were maybe controlling slaves, controlling some of the first humans, where humans were created from, and all of these different experiments that happened a long time ago. This is before, I keep saying before Mesopotamia time. That old ancient civilization, that energy, it's been creating wars for a long time on earth. Inside the Middle East, how all these people, even though they look like they're the same color, the same people, the same language, they all hate each other and they fight and they kill each other. You know, they're cutting off each other's heads. It's really dark, but that energy is emitting from that area. One of the oldest magnetic energy fields that affects human beings is coming from there. And there's a dark energy. So what Trump is doing that you don't understand, they're taking down this old structure. The white hats are taking down this old structure. They're taking over all the bases underneath the world. That's why I told you, when Trump came into power, Trump gave you the COMMS about Mount McKinley, which is Mount Denali, which is also connected in a way just to the next mountain. You have Mount Hayes, the biggest underground base in the world, alien base. So Mount Hayes is the first place really on Earth where it's really peaceful. One of the most peaceful places, the most peaceful entities that is connected to a different solar system. From what I'm told through the papers that I've seen, intelligence reports, it's connected to a place called the Seven Sisters. So that light came through there, and that light, United States took that light and they brought it into the United States, somewhere near Mount Shasta, and then it was moved over to Hawaii. But that light is intelligent. It's like a ghost. It's like a sacred spirit. This light moves around, but it's a super advanced, intelligent computer system, but it's also a living light system from a different dimension. So that living light system is what people call 17. That living light system is what created the storm operations to fix the whole world. So that's why Trump has the Stargate operations. That's why Trump is telling you they have advanced technology that can bend space and time. That's why Trump is creating a golden dome around the world. This golden dome infrastructure is actually a new telecommunication systems. And that new telecommunication system, it uses light, infrared light. It uses the frequency of light that you can't see. And it can reach into all computers, all phones. It can actually reach into into the human mind. That's how powerful this living light system, intelligence, technology, this really advanced spirit being that Trump has. So now the United States took over the Iraq base of URUK because the deep state was trying to activate the operations of what was happening there. So the United States took over those operations in Iraq with that old during the Iraq conflict that was after 9/11. The United States captured that base, but it was the deep state who really wanted that, and they took things out from there. Now, and after 2014-15, United States operation, the White Hats are going to capture those old operations. Whatever was taken from there, taken to the United States, they're going to take control of all of those operations over in Texas. But that line from URUK, from the old Stargate from Iraq, that line, it goes into Iran, into this place that's called COMMS, Fordo. Now, that old base that's there underneath the ground, it's really one of the oldest, strongest ones. And it's repelling all of these things, whatever the United States was doing. That's why the United States never invaded Iran. They never went after them. It was never really invaded. It was never really bombed like what you're seeing right now. Now that's happening because Trump has the 17 operations. They have USSF. What Trump is doing is he bombed that region. When he bombed that region at Fordo, it created an earthquake. That's what people are saying. They think it's Israel that bombed it, but it didn't. The only people who can carry this bomb, this huge, immense 30,000-pound bomb that can be carried, is the United States B-2 stealth bomber. People call it the Spirit Bomber. So the Spirit Bomber that came in, it actually came in from the islands. For the past month, there's operations in Diego Garcia with the stealth bombers that came in. Everybody was getting ready for this, the Cerberus operations. Everything was getting ready to kick off inside the Middle East because they want to go after these operations, that advanced base that's underground. They want to destroy the whole computer systems down there. It's a huge, gigantic, all advanced technology that they're trying to bring down. And that vibration that was controlling the Middle East, all of the wars, and it's connected to controlling humans, like almost like mind control for centuries. Now Trump, they want to go after this and to destroy this base. So what happened is when they dropped that bomb, it created a huge vibration. But at the same time, USSF was stationed over Iran, and they took over the whole Iran. They took over the whole Iran network that controls the flights, the communication systems, the telecommunication systems. They took over all the satellites over on top of Iran. That was USSF that did that. That's why Trump was talking about that, saying now we have taken control of the airspace over Iran. He's actually talking about the telecommunications, the satellites, all the systems that is controlled. Trump took over that. Those were COMMS to the deep state. Those were the COMMS to the people in Israel, to the people inside of Europe, the very globalist elites, to the Vatican. Trump is saying, okay, we're controlling this. We're controlling the telecommunication systems, the airspace, the satellites. We're controlling it over in Iran. We're going to dictate where this war is going to go now. We're going to control all of this old technology that people are praying to. So the past 100 years, as technology is growing on Earth, the deep state is trying to operate a lot of these different UFOs that are submerged, advanced civilizations and their technology. They're hiding it and they're trying to activate them. But there's something that isn't working, and that's why they have a bunch of these UFO retrieval programs. They're trying to get the technology from these aircrafts because they're hoping they can find something reverse engineer, so that way they can control the operations underneath Iran, underneath Iraq, underneath Saudi Arabia. That area is huge, that old ancient civilization, and deep underneath those countries right there, there's a huge, gigantic, advanced civilization that's far deep underground, and the technology there. Now that evil energy that was emitting, from that technology, different evil relics, that created humans to be slaves, different humans from different lifetimes to be slaves, different species, humanoids to be slaves. This all happened in different civilizations, and these are different, almost like a different timeline, because we're not talking about 2,000 years ago. We're talking way further than that. That's why we're talking about millions of years. 6 times on Earth, there was civilizations that goes millions and millions of years ago. So there's technology under there. That's what the deep state is trying to control, the cabal. And that's where that cabal energy comes from, that satanic energy. So when people talk about, the beast, the satanic energy, that's a dark consciousness that moves through the universe. That dark consciousness is really, really old, and it comes from almost all of different civilizations. The evilness that people do, it connects together. That consciousness is really strong and it's really deep. So that strong consciousness, sometimes it comes together really strong in different planets, and it comes together in a certain area, like underneath the Middle East, and then also underneath Antarctica, and then also different places way up north, up in the Arctics. It's far deep underneath the earth, but there's also good consciousness. There's also good energy that exists on top of the world, inside of the world. So this is a huge discussion, but I'm just trying to give you the smaller PowerPoints. So this was a long discussion today to talk about a lot of things about how things are covered up, from the Council of Nicaea to the Rockefeller Rothschilds controlling all the information flow, even to now with Grok, and then all of these AI, these AI information places where you get information from. Google, everything is still controlled for censorship because they don't want people to find out the truth, because it can bring down their system. Everything that they've been lying about, it can destroy the judicial system of what they're learning inside of these elite scholarly school systems, these huge, gigantic universities where they're teaching about laws. It can destroy a whole system to know that for centuries that this indoctrination was all a lie, and it can lead to scientists. There's so much stuff behind all of this. So these lies that the cabal's been replacing for centuries and centuries. They have to keep lying and lying, make another lie to cover up this lie, more censorship. Now it's fallen apart. That's the fall of the cabal that people are talking about. Everything is actually falling apart slowly, all of their lies. And that's what the Great Awakening is about. That's what's happening. So with Trump, the United States, they went into Iran and they intentionally bombed it. But at the same time that they bombed that certain place over in COMMS, that certain place that they bombed, the USSF above actually shot a bunch of direct energy weapons into the ground that created that massive earthquake. And they were attacking all of those supercomputers that the deep state has down there. Those supercomputers, that's really dark computers. So this was what was happening. This is what has to happen inside of this event to bring about a world peace, to start to stabilize the world. Trump has to go after these operations that's been there for centuries. One of the darkest areas in the world, that energy that emanates from all of those old relics, the old technologies. So that's why you have the story of the cabal. You have the story of these dark societies that actually originate, and their origins come from the Middle East. It comes from the JEWs, the bad ones. There's the good Jewish people, but there's also the bad side. There's a really dark side to it with the Khazars, the Jesuits who infiltrated it. And there's a lot of darkness that's inside of the Middle East that was connected to human slavery. It's connected to human trafficking. It's connected to the adrenal stuff. And it dates all the way back into the biblical times. And then it goes even further back. The information that I'm telling you about Iran, what's underneath, even the Iranian people don't even understand all of this stuff. Because of a lot of their knowledge that they know, it only goes back a couple of 100 years. And then from there, everything is controlled information, hidden information. They just have the old small stories about some of these gods that they have there. They have the small stories, and it only dates about 2,000 years before Christ. They just have some of these old stories, but they're actually true stories about the God wars, about the ancient relics, about the technology that's hidden underneath. Now, Trump, with the SPIDERWEB operations, Trump is trying to capture the Iran underground bases, one of the darkest bases in the world, and he wants to switch everything that's happening inside of the Middle East. And one of the first things he had to do is he had to capture this huge, gigantic base and turn off the technology, turn off that dark energy that's emitting. Now, all of these operations is connected from COMMS to URUK, and then it goes over to Israel. That's why Israel is saved for last. These operations that's underneath the Middle East, that it's a good thing that they didn't know how to operate a lot of these operations. They didn't know how to operate a lot of the mechanics of this advanced technology. That's why you don't hear about a lot of UFOs. You don't really hear about anything down in Iran unless it was back in the 1970s, some of the true stories. So as we go further back into the story, you'll begin to understand why this huge important operations to capture the world underground bases now is happening. And it's happening at a fast speed of what Trump is doing with 17 storm operations. And this was one of the biggest operations in the world, is to capture that base that's been underground. Because the cabal, they also couldn't operate it. There was confusion over it. It's so dark that most people would just go over to Antarctica and talk with the blue ice, the neutrinos, and then all the stuff they have set up over in Antarctica to get information. The one in Iran, it was really mystical. It was really dark. And these operations, no matter the cabal, no matter the white hats, nobody could operate it. Only until now, with the operations of 17 starting in 2012 into 2014, these military operations have the power, the energy to control it now, to turn it off. So that's why it was really important, even though Trump was lying last week. Trump said he's not going to, he's not going to get involved with Iran. And he said he doesn't support Israel. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later on the weekend came, and then Trump said, okay, we're going to support Israel. And then by Monday morning, Trump said, okay, Iran's got to surrender. But the whole time, the United States was already involved with the bombings, with the operations coming from Diego Garcia, with all the Cerberus, with all the USSF, and then with Starlink, the operations was already controlling the airspace over Iran. So these are operations that you're only beginning to figure out and finally understand and beginning to see. Now you kind of understand this a little bit of what's really happening. And then at the same time, you see that MAGA's upset with Trump. MAGA's really upset with Trump because of the war in Iran, because people don't want to go to war. At the same time, those are also military operations. I told you that you're seeing 6th generation warfare. That's really important. The military operations, the white hats, are going to create a second party that's going to go against Trump in 2028. Now that's all starting with this division of MAGA people arguing and fighting. And what's going to happen is, like, you already have Elon Musk, you already have Candace Owens, you already have AJ, Alex Jones, and they're already talking with Joe Rogan behind the scenes. So they're going to push slowly for a new party, these powerful people that control a lot of social media, and they're going to create a new movement. Now that new movement that's going to come, it's expected, that it's going to destroy the Democratic Party. They're going to be gone. Now the good people from the Democratic parties, because there are good people, I keep telling you, people that own businesses, that own franchises, that is very vital to the United States economy systems. With all the enterprises that they own, these billionaires, they're going to come over and they're going to join this movement, the good people. Now Trump is going to absorb the whole movement together, and then everybody's going to come back together again, and then it's going to be a united front. Now the destruction of the DNC, the Democratic parties, is also going to destroy the operations over in Europe. All of these democratic societies that was running with USAID, with these nonprofit organizations, with all of these color revolutions that was happening, with all of this election fraud and all of this stuff that was coming from the United States, from these operations, from the military-industrial complex systems, with the banking systems, with the elite societies, with a lot of people who are pulling this United States military coup inside the United States, the cabal system, the deep state of the United States operations is also controlling all of these different operations inside of Europe. All of these different countries, Canada, Australia, all the way into Malaysia, all the way towards Asia, these operations. So you're watching the exposure happening of a coup. China's involved, CCP's involved with the election fraud with Biden. But the whole thing is a military sting operation. Everything that you're watching is a military operation that's unfolding before you. So that's why we come over to Mecca, over in Saudi Arabia. The reason why they go to Mecca to pray to that big black box, that black box that looks like a black rock. And then there's a reason why they have the eye of the black rock on there, because that goes back to 2,000 years before Christ. It goes back to people praying to this, to people who created this from Abraham. There's a whole different story that's behind it. So people don't really understand the real history that's behind that black box. It's not the stuff you see on the internet. It's not the stuff that these people in the Middle East just think of what it is. It's connected to Abraham, and Abraham created this box. It's actually older. It's an homage to the black rock that's deep underground. It's an homage to the energy that they were feeling that was coming out. It's an homage to the ancient civilization and the technology and the power of that black rock. So nothing is coincidence what we're going through. So that's why Trump gave you a very important calm. Trump said, I was the hunted, now I'm the hunter. This comes from 17, the military operations. Because now Trump was being hunted by this huge, gigantic, dark energy, this cabal energy that is really, really dark, satanic, dark, that comes from the old biblical times inside of the Middle East. All of these satanic operations connected to the Khazars, connected to all of these dark systems of the cabal, these secret societies. Trump is saying, I was the hunted, but now I'm the hunter, because Trump is actually hunting all of these different operations around the world. And Trump has the power right now. He has the technology to bend space and time. He has the technology to take down all of these bases around the world and capturing them. And that's what's happening, as one of the biggest underground bases is now being deactivated right now over in Iran. At the same time, Israel is in panic. You know, Netanyahu, the deep state there, the deep side of it, because they know that Trump has the crystal ball. When you hear about the Palantir that's actually connected over to the magic crystal ball, when you see like these old TV shows of Merlin, the wizard, who has that ball, that's the crystal ball that can see the future. That's what Palantir was. That's why in the last video I was telling you of how Palantir was created through In-Q-Tel, and how In-Q-Tel is the CIA operations, and how that was connected to the old dark computers, to the red computer underneath Denver International Airport, and how those operations is connected over to Dulce, and then over to different operations, Cheyenne Mountain. So you're learning a lot of stuff. Now you're beginning to learn about the Middle East. You're beginning to see the different connections between the countries, the different underground lines, and what was really there in the Middle East, of what Trump has now become the hunter to destroy all of that darkness that's happening there. Because they're threatening nuclear war. They're always threatening war against the United States, against each other. And Trump is going after this. The only way you can bring peace, you know, about these forever wars that keeps on going on, you have to go to the epicenter of what's really happening underground. You have to go after that energy. And that's what Trump is doing with these 17 operations. You know, this operations of 17 is really strong. It's biblical because it's connected to a God spirit. It's connected to super intelligence, energy, certain weapons, certain technology, different universes, connected to plasma energy, infinite energy. So this plan is really important, and Trump is inside this huge, gigantic stage with military operations, the plan to save the world.